Hello, everyone. Thank you very much
Hi.
for joining us again. Today, we're going to carry on with the story that we've been looking at for three of the last 4 weeks, I guess. It's the story of Joseph. In fact, this week we're going to bring that story to a conclusion. It's an amazing story, and today's lesson has one of my favorite stories from the entire Bible. So you may remember, just to get a reminder of where all this story sits. So you remember we started with this cube a number of weeks ago, and we showed the picture of a tree and the grass and the mountains and the sun and the sky and animals and people. And it reminds us that all of creation was created by God. And God created everything to be good. But we were disobedient. And that's the story of Adam and Eve. We were disobedient, and that made God very sad. And that made things worse for us. And so our relationship with God was broken because of our disobedience, because of our refusal to listen to God and to do what God asks us to do. And so that made our relationship with God a kind of broken relationship. You know how sometimes we can have broken relationships with each other. And so the story of Joseph really starts with that situation and how God decided to do something to make it better. And even though things had started out well and things had gotten sad because of our disobedience, God decided to start a whole new relationship with a particular group of people, one particular family, we might say. And Joseph was part of that family. And eventually, through that family, we come to the story of Jesus because characters like Joseph is one of the great 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 grandfathers of Jesus. So it's all part of that family from which Jesus came, that God chose to start a new relationship so that we could all be part of that family. And so that's where the story sits, and that's where we're going to pick up the story today. And you may remember several weeks ago we started with the story of Joseph and his father Jacob and his brothers. He had 11 brothers, but Joseph was his father Jacob's favorite, and that made the other brothers jealous. In fact, Joseph, you may remember, gave Jacob gave Joseph a coat of many colors. We had that craft a few weeks ago, and that made them even more jealous, even more resentful. And they did some really bad things to Joseph, and eventually Joseph was sold to be a slave. He was forced to leave his home. He was dragged away by other people, and he had no way of saying goodbye to his father, goodbye to the rest of his family, and he had to live in a new country. So if you think about this, that little bit right here, the little yellow bit there, that's where Joseph's home was, but he was taken off to Egypt. So if you think about, there's the Mediterranean and the Red Sea, that's the area where Joseph and his family lived. And he was taken as a slave to Egypt. That was pretty bad all by itself. I mean, that's a pretty nasty thing to happen, be sort of stolen away from your family and from your home. But things went badly after that. They even got worse. Joseph was a servant, his slave, and he was accused of doing something which he never did. He was completely innocent of it, and he was put in prison. So another bad thing. You could sort of think, after all these bad things, Joseph might be getting, just really, really quite upset and angry or even depressed, all those kinds of things. But Joseph still, even though bad things had happened, Joseph still trusted God. He trusted that somehow God was going to be with him through all of these bad things, and that's exactly what happened. So Joseph tried to be faithful to God. He tried to be honest and hardworking, and eventually, as you may remember the story, he eventually rose to the position of being the second most important person, the second most powerful person in the entire country of Egypt. And his job was actually to help them to plan for the future. So he interpreted a dream, you may remember, that there were going to be 7 good years, and they were going to have lots of food for 7 years, but then there were going to be 7 bad years, 7 years of bad weather, bad harvest, and they wouldn't have enough food. And so if they didn't prepare for the bad years, they would starve. And so Joseph's plan was, when you have lots, let's put some away. Let's store some up. Let's sort of set it aside so that when the 7 bad years come, then they had that to live on. And that's exactly what they did. And that was Joseph's job, was to keep track of all that during the 7 good years, and then to go through the process of distributing it and selling it during the bad years. So that famine, all that bad stuff, didn't just affect Egypt, but it affected the whole region. And so the story we pick up today is that Joseph's family back home in Israel, they were pretty hungry because they had bad harvest and they needed to buy food. They didn't have any food. So they went to Egypt. They heard that there was food in Egypt because someone had made the decision to store some up. And so they went to Egypt to buy some food. They took their money. They traveled that long distance. They would have, no cars, no planes, would have had to travel by animal, would have had to travel by walking. And so they got to Egypt. And when they got to Egypt, 10 of the brothers, in fact, traveled down. Only one brother stayed home. That was the youngest brother.
Benjamin.
Benjamin, that's right, a guy named Benjamin. He stayed home, and the other 10 traveled to Egypt to buy the food. And when they got there, Joseph recognized them, but they didn't recognize him, right? He had grown up since when they had last seen him. Of course, he was also dressed differently. He was dressed as an Egyptian. So he recognized them, but they did not recognize him. So Joseph went through the business. He didn't tell them who he was, went through the business of selling them the food and sent them back on their way. But he made an arrangement with one of his servants, and he said, put their money back in the food bags, when they got back, they realized that even though they had tried to pay for the food, they'd never paid for it because the money was still in their bag. They didn't know how that happened, but they couldn't do much about that at that point in time. So, but one thing happened before they left. Joseph wanted to see his younger brother Benjamin, so he made a deal with him, and he said, "One of you must stay here as a guarantee that the other ones will come back with Benjamin." And so one brother stayed behind in Egypt, and the others went back home. And so when they got back home, they told their father. Jacob did not want to send Benjamin down because, as he said, I've already lost one son, Joseph. I don't want to lose a second son, Benjamin. But when they ran out of food, they didn't have much choice. They all had to go again. And so the 10 brothers, that's the 9 who had returned, and Benjamin, they headed back to Egypt. And when they got back to Egypt, Joseph recognized them and saw that Benjamin had come with them. So he arranged for his servants to put on a meal for them, a fancy meal for them, and he got to meet Benjamin. He agreed that they could go back home, but he came up with a plan, and he was trying to test his brothers to see what kind of people they had become after all those years. And so he let all 10 brothers go home, but he arranged for their money to be put back secretly back into their sacks. But then he also arranged for his silver cup, his own personal silver cup, to be put into Benjamin's sack.
Something valuable.
Something really valuable, exactly. And so, what they left, they headed back home. But Joseph, once they left, sent his servants out to them, sort of to accuse them of stealing the silver cup, to see how they would react. And so they brought them back, and Joseph said, why would you do that? I was good to you. Why would you do something evil to me by stealing this? So they said that Benjamin had to stay because it was found in Benjamin's sack. It was assumed that Benjamin had stolen this silver cup. And the oldest brother said, "No, you can't do that. Please don't do that. If the youngest son is forced to stay here when we go home and tell our father, he will be so sad that he might even die." And Judah said, "Let me stay here. Let me stay here instead of the youngest one." So he was prepared to make the sacrifice to stay in Egypt so that the youngest brother, Benjamin, would go back home. And Joseph realized in that moment that his brothers were not the mean, self centered, unkind brothers that they used to be. So the test had proven to him that his brothers had become better people. And so he revealed himself. He revealed himself to his brothers. Told his brothers that it was Joseph. They could scarcely believe it, right? Because they hadn't seen Joseph in years, and they thought Joseph might have been dead for all they knew. But he revealed himself to Joseph, and the most amazing part of the story is he forgave them. He forgave them. He refused to be angry and bitter at his brothers for all the things that they had done to him when he was younger. And he said the reason he forgave them, that even though they decided to do evil things to him, they said even though they planned evil things, God was planning something good. Because what God was planning was to put Joseph in a position where he could save not just the people of Egypt, but he could save his brothers as well. So he saved his brothers' lives. He saved his father's life by being able to sell them food. And so Joseph said that was God's plan all along, because God was with him, and he knew that God was with him in Egypt. So he forgave his brothers even though they had been tremendously unkind. They had been really evil towards him. He forgave them. And that's a wonderful story because it also speaks to us as well, right? Because we are forgiven because of Joseph's great grandson, whose name is Jesus. So we have a craft, and Genesis is going to show you a craft that we have to help remind us about this idea of how important it is to forgive.
So what it is it's something that you can put up on your wall or maybe on a shelf. So it looks like a hug, like an embrace. So we're going to make the strip, which is the arm, and we're going to make the top part the head, which we're going to attach, and then we're going to trace and cut out our hands. So just give me a second here while I do just some quick lines here. Don't tell them how crooked those lines are.
Oh, they're tremendously straight, I think. They're going to see in just a moment.
I am going to give you the bottom strip of paper and let you write on it.
Okay.
Because we're going to put some words on it with a message, an important message. So, Father Kevin does the writing. Are you thinking about the color pencil?
Not particularly.
This looks nice.
Okay.
I am going to cut out the top part, which is going to be the head.
I actually supposed to write on that, I think.
Oh, I have to cut this out. I thought it went on the center of the arms. Just give me a sec here while I cut.
There. Thank you
There
very
you
much.
go.
There, I'll give
Now
that
I'm just going to show you quickly here. I have a piece of paper that's not so thick. That one's a thicker paper so that it'll stand up. And what you're going to do is you're going to trace your hand. So just hand flat on the piece of paper and a pencil and go around. And you're going to trace both hands. And the second hand is a little hard to do because, of course, it's the hand you're not used to doing. Or it's the hand that you usually write with that you're trying to trace. So I have two here, and I'm going to cut those ones out quickly. This is easy. And you did your writing?
I did.
And then I'll give you the strip of paper that we have. And the glue. Are you okay to use glue?
I can try.
And I'll let you put that there. And of course, you can always color. We're just using white paper, but you could use colored paper, and you could color your hands and around the place where you write on your what looks like the arms. And of course, you can draw a face on the how's that going?
Just fine, thank you.
I got one hand cut out. And should we
see that? So do you see what I wrote there? Maybe can you read that?
That's important.
Forgiveness helps everyone. Forgiveness helps. It may not be easy to read that, but forgiveness helps everyone. Okay.
So I'm going to give you one hand.
Thank you very much. I'm very handy.
Always has a pun. And you're going to glue that to the end of one to make it look like one set of arms or one side of arms. Cut out this one. And I think this would be fun maybe to put up on a bulletin board in your room or sit it on a shelf on your dresser. Because I think it's really important to remember how powerful forgiveness is. Just like Joseph forgave his brothers, and he could see that in the bad stuff he was still able to do good things and help people. I think it's very important to realize how powerful forgiveness is, right? And we all need to be forgiven too.
Exactly.
Because we all fall short at times. And then this one, still gluing.
I am. Could I borrow your scissors just to give a little trim there?
Yep.
There we go.
I just made the end too long. And you're going to have to adjust with yours too.
Thanks. There you go. There you go.
Thank you. I think you glued the wrong side.
I think I moved the wrong side.
But that's okay. Easy to fix.
It is. There we go. Okay. There we go. And look, I put two eyes on it.
We're going to put two eyes on it. So you can see it looks just like arms And you could even twist it a little bit so
Give a little
it does
fold.
look like an embrace.
And we give that a bit of a fold there. Excuse
Yep.
me, I'm going to try that.
So you could set it on something like a shelf
Or a table.
or a table or a dresser, somewhere where you can see it.
There, I'll set that down.
And I really
don't know if you can read it, but it says forgiveness helps everyone.
And on your sheet of paper that's coming that you can print out to do the craft, it's going to say that.
Yeah.
So you'll see the words and you'll be able to put it on. And you can decorate this however you want. You can put it on your table, on a shelf. You can hang it up on a bulletin board. It really does feel like a bit of an embrace.
Yeah. So just to sort of wrap things up. So think about that. This is a story about forgiveness, right? It's a story about how Joseph forgave all of his brothers. And he did that because he knew that God had helped him all through those bad times, and that God had a plan that he was going to be able to help other people. So sometimes people do things that hurt us. I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase, sticks and stones will break your bones, what names will never hurt you. But sometimes things do hurt. So sometimes people say things and do things which hurt us. But if all we ever do is sort of keep that inside and hold all that anger in and all that resentment in and try to get even with them, try to hurt them back, all we're going to do is make things worse for us and for them, because forgiveness helps everyone, not just the person who's hurt us, but it helps us as well. And so that's what Joseph did, right? So he forgave his brothers. He refused to be angry and resentful. And because he refused to be angry and resentful, God was able to do great things with him and for him. So our thing to think about this week is be kind and forgiving to one another. So we'll send some material out for us to think about in this Joseph story, and this wonderful story about how God brought good things through bad times, and how God helped Joseph to be able to forgive his brothers. I think that's it for this. Next week
Looks
we're going
like
to pick
there's
up.
a lot of fun sheets that you can do at home.
There are
too,
actually, yeah. So really, really good stuff. So
enjoy, have fun doing them.
That's right. There's some word searches, and there's word tiles, and there's something called a word lineup as well. Lots of great material. So lots of fun things for you guys to work on as we finish up the story of Joseph, because next week we're going to start a whole new story about a different person, but that story is going to start in Egypt as well. So thank you very much, guys, for joining us, and look forward to having you join us next week as we pick up our story with an entirely new person. Have a great week. Bye now.
Bye.